This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by Peninsula Regional Medical Center.
It goes without saying, nobody wants to hear the words, "you have cancer." Unfortunately, when it comes to certain types of cancer, you really can't do anything to prevent it. For instance, perhaps it runs in the family.
But when it comes to colon cancer, the third most common cancer diagnosed in both men and women, with proper screening, it is absolutely preventable, and people seem to be taking note. The American Cancer Society reports the death rate from colorectal cancer has been dropping for more than 20 years in both men and women. And thanks to screening and improved treatments, the Society says there are now more than 1 million survivors of colorectal cancer in the United States. But those numbers can improve.
There are, in fact, still plenty of people who do develop the disease. The American Cancer Society reports there will be more than 93,000 new cases of colon cancer diagnosed this year. Nearly 50,000 people will die from the disease in 2015. The Society reports your risk of developing colon cancer is about 1 in 20, or about 5%. So, how can you avoid becoming a part of the statistics?
As with a lot of things in life, knowledge is key. Joining us today to tell us more is Dr. Halim Charbel, a gastroenterologist with Peninsula Regional Medical Center. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Okay, so first of all, what is colon cancer?
Colon cancer is a tumor that develops in the large bowel, and it forms as a small lesion that's called a polyp that grows over years to become a malignant tumor, and it can spread to other organs. As you can see on the video, these are small lesions that are found in the colon, anywhere in the colon, different shapes and forms, but they grow very slowly, and over time they can form a mass that can block the colon or spread to other organs.
So, does it affect more men than women?
Well, there's a slight predominance for men, but both men and women are affected, and the difference is not that significant. So all the recommendations, the guidelines for when we start screening and how often we screen are the same for both men and women. Everybody is at risk.
All right, let's talk risk factors. What are they?
The vast majority of cases of colon cancer do not have any specific risk factor. The risk of colon cancer increases with age, so everybody is at risk. But there are some risk factors that increase your risk more than the average population. If you have any family history of colon cancer, so anybody with family history of colon cancer needs to talk to their doctor to make sure they don't need to be screened more aggressively. If you had polyps on a previous colonoscopy, you are at increased risk of developing more polyps and cancer. There are certain people who have specific diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, and these can put you at increased risk for colon cancer. And there's a minority of patients who have certain genetic syndromes that can put them at a very high risk of colon cancer. But again, most of the patients don't have any specific risk factor, and just with age they can develop cancer.
Okay, so what do I need to look out for that says I need to go get checked? What kind of symptoms am I going to show?
So first, we don't wait for any symptoms before we start screening, because polyps that are pre-malignant don't cause any symptoms. So we start before having any symptoms, because it might be too late. But there are some symptoms that are suggestive and need to be evaluated, and the number one symptom is rectal bleeding. So if there's any blood in the stools, then we need to make sure that there's no colon cancer. Second, if there's any abdominal pain that is not explained by any other cause, and if there's any change in bowel habits such as new onset constipation or worsening constipation or change in the caliber of the stools. And there's one sign that always needs to be investigated for possible colon cancer, which is anemia. If you have low blood counts with low iron levels, that can be suggestive as well.
All right, everyone cringes when they hear the word colonoscopy, but you really shouldn't be afraid. Can you kind of run us through it?
Yes, I always tell my patients that the worst part of the procedure is actually the day before the procedure, when you drink the bowel prep that causes the diarrhea to clean the colon. But the procedure itself is done as an outpatient. The patient shows up and we give them medications through the IV, so they will be completely asleep and comfortable. You won't feel anything, you won't remember anything, you won't have any pain, and you will not be awake during the procedure. We go in with a flexible tube with a camera and a light and take a look all over the colon to see if there are polyps. And if there is a polyp, we take it out during the same procedure to prevent it from becoming cancer. It takes around 15 or 20 minutes, and then the patient wakes up in a few minutes. We talk to them, tell them what we found, and they go home.
Okay, so how often should we have a colonoscopy?
The recommendations are that everybody at age 15 needs to have a colonoscopy, and based on the findings, if we don't have any polyps, then we repeat a colonoscopy in 10 years. If we find polyps, we have to repeat it in 5 years. Now, if there's a family history of colon cancer, we usually start at age 40, and we do it every 5 years.
All right, so what are the treatments for colon cancer?
The treatment is different depending on when the cancer is diagnosed. If it is found at an early stage where the tumor is still limited to the colon, usually the treatment is surgical. So it's usually done laparoscopically. They go in, cut that part of the colon out, hook things back together. And in most cases, the patient is actually cured. Now, they may or may not need chemotherapy after that, depending on what the findings are during the surgery. However, if the tumor is found late, where it's already spread to other organs, then we don't usually talk about cure anymore, and the main treatment is chemotherapy.
Is there anything we can do preventative to try to keep it from happening?
Yes, there are some diets that are associated with lower risk of colon cancer. So a diet that is high in fiber, a diet that is high in calcium, a diet that is low in fat, and a diet that is low in red meat are usually associated with a lower risk of colon cancer. So changing our diet might help. And again, the most important preventative thing is to actually get screened.
All right, that is the bottom line. Get yourself screened. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us
Appreciate
this
it.
afternoon. And to read more from PRMC about colon cancer, go to WBOC.com, click on our picture at the top of the page.
Okay, so maybe it's not colon cancer that you're dealing with, but a different type of cancer. After all, the National Cancer Institute reports more than 13 million Americans have some type of cancer.
After a diagnosis, many patients search for ways to improve their odds of beating the disease. Now, a new study shows there are simple ways to up your chances to live longer.
Diane Mapes punches a bag in the gym. But for the past 4 years, she's been fighting another opponent, breast cancer.
I got the full Monty with regard to treatment, double mastectomy, chemotherapy, and then radiation.
Diane says staying active during and after treatment kept her energy levels up.
Exercise in general, it made a big difference for me.
Dr. Ann McTiernan recently conducted an analysis of 85 studies that included more than 160,000 breast cancer survivors. One key finding, patients who exercise live longer.
Being as active as they can be for about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
Another important factor for survival was maintaining a healthy weight.
Women who are obese or overweight had about a 30 to 50% increased risk of dying either of breast cancer or of dying overall.
To lose weight, you have to burn more calories than you take in. 1 pound equals 3,500 calories, so you need to reduce your calories by 500 to 1,000 per day to lose about 2 pounds per week. The researchers also found eating foods that contain fiber and soy and consuming less saturated fat meant a longer life for cancer patients. Diane says boxing helps her channel the anger she has toward the cancer and the treatments.
When I box, I always think of Taxotere, which took my hair and kind of messed with my joints and still does.
A simple way to help her feel better and maybe also live longer.
I'm cancer-free right now.
The American Institute for Cancer Research has 10 recommendations for cancer prevention that doctors say breast cancer survivors should also follow. Some of these include limiting the consumption of sugary drinks, alcohol, salt, and red meat. We'll list the rest of the recommendations on WBOC.com. Just click on our picture at the top of the page.
Now, one man who took control of his health is the world's strongest drug-free man, Mike Hall. You've probably heard us tell the story of how he cheated death when he had what's called a widowmaker heart attack in 2013. Today we're going to tell you the rest of the story, including how a decision he made more than 40 years ago is what doctors say saved his life.
Plus, we know that being organized can help reduce stress, so we're tackling the closet. Later, we hear some tips on how to organize it before the spring wardrobe swap out. Delmarva Life, we'll be right back.